Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast where we drop a bomb to the center of the earth because this week we watched Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD,
Written by Milton Subotsky.
directed by Gordon Flemying with a Y still.
He didn't change it. Damn him.
Yeah, he didn't change his name from the first to the second movie.
And released on August 5th, 1966.
No surprise guests this week. No surprises this week. Just
No.
me and Keon.
It's just us.
Literally the first time in a month, almost.
You can just end the episode now. It's just us. Nothing to see here.
Yeah, you can shut it down. Nothing special going on this week. The way we're playing this up really makes it seem like we're about to do something, but we're not. We're actually not. Okay, we're actually not.
No, we're just about to talk about Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD for some amount of time. And, I don't know about you, but to me, the title of this movie doesn't seem grammatically, right.
It also doesn't really roll off the tongue very, nicely.
Yeah, so, maybe this is just going to be indicative of how much or how much we didn't look up stuff for this movie, especially as compared to what Brendan and Nathan had to offer last week. But, is there any reason why they didn't just call it the Dalek Invasion of Earth 2150 AD?
That critical word, the. You can't be having that.
Yeah, well, they did take it out, they just call it TARDIS instead of the TARDIS. So, who knows, maybe Milton Subotsky and actually David Whittaker is actually credited in the credits of this. I don't know to what extent he actually was involved in this movie itself, but he's credited right next to Milton Subotsky in the credits, like additional input or something like that. Like additional, I don't remember exactly what it was.
That's interesting because last week Nathan was questioning whether or not David Whittaker had anything to do with the first Dalek movie, and he said that he was on IMDb as uncredited writer.
Yeah, so this one he actually is credited, but it wasn't. They didn't call him a writer; they called him something else. So, I don't know to what extent he actually, sat down with the team who made this and worked on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just reading here that there are actually two different spellings of the film title. Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD with an apostrophe after the S. So I guess the possessive, the Daleks' invasion of Earth, I guess, which appears in the film's title sequence, and then Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD, which was used in the film's trailer. That one has no apostrophe after the S.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I guess we can start off by saying that I actually enjoyed this one more than the first one. I'm going to be honest. I enjoyed this one a lot more, in fact. I've just felt like it hid its low budgetness a lot better. The plot was, okay, I'll freely admit here, the plot wasn't great. The plot wasn't great.
No, it wasn't.
But, it followed the original serial pretty similarly to my recollection. Obviously, I remember the Dalek Invasion of Earth less than the Daleks because we watched the Daleks twice and not Invasion of Earth twice. But from what I could recollect, it followed it pretty well.
Yeah, that was the thing is the last time, I don't know if you've gone back and rewatched it, I would assume not. But the last time I watched this was in 2014. So the serial, that is. So
it's
I didn't necessarily
poetry, it rhymes.
Yeah, so I didn't remember the plot too well. But I actually thought you mentioned that this looks a lot less low budget. That's because it is. Apparently the budget was at least slightly higher for this one.
Yeah, I mean, clearly not like.
It wasn't like an astronomical leap, but they did have enough to do some location footage for this one.
Yeah, and I think it really shows. I think they really put the budget in the right place. The TARDIS set looks really good this week again. Not again, actually. Last week's looks terrible. But the TARDIS set this week, even though it appears for even less time than the TARDIS last week, I think the TARDIS, or just TARDIS, appears for. It's got to be all of maybe 3 minutes on screen.
If that.
It looks really good. Maybe it's just like a television control room that they used.
Well, I don't know, but they got the look a lot more true to the show, at least.
Well, not only that, it just looks like more like the control room of the time and space machine would look like, and not like cardboard in the side of the room with spools of string taped to it.
Well, it could be like, in universe, the Doctor is just, or Doctor Who is just some random ass human who created a time machine. So maybe he got better. Like, this is a year later, or this is like an undisclosed amount of time later in the universe of the movie. So maybe he got better at creating stuff.
I mean, Doctor Who and the Daleks made it, or tried to make it very clear that, yeah, this is just a random human who built a time machine.
Yeah, well, that was the thing of the first one too, of he was just some guy. And then, Ian came over and he was like, hey, you want to come out back and see my time machine that I built? Just like a low key, just has one in his backyard.
Yeah, and then Ian accidentally, quote unquote, trips the lever.
I mean, it was an accident. It wasn't like some sinister thing of I'm going to do this and make it look like an accident. Right?
I mean, he could be the master.
Okay, so this is barely related, but speaking of people who just having time machines, so I actually found out. I looked up I Am Foreman on the Doctor Who wiki. And okay, so brace yourselves. I didn't know any of this. So I Am Foreman is apparently a Time Lord who had infiltrated Earth society.
What?
Yeah. According to the Doctor Who wiki. You know how it says in the very first episode of Doctor Who, they go into I Am Foreman, that's where they're holding the TARDIS, is I Am Foreman's junkyard.
Yep.
Yeah. Apparently he's actually a Time Lord.
Wow. According to what?
According to a bunch of audios and books, I think.
Oh boy. I mean, now they can freely make I Am Foreman just another incarnation of the Doctor, and it wouldn't even contradict canon anymore.
I just, this is actually even less related, but a couple of years ago when Brexit was first going down, or the decision for it, Very Pete Lambert on Twitter posted a tweet that I'll never forget, which is the caption was something like subliminal messaging since the beginning, and then he quoted I'm for Remain, and posted a screenshot of the I Am Foreman sign.
Doctor Who 50 years ahead of its time. Unless they specifically put that in because we're mentioning that now on our podcast.
Oh God. Okay, so you can tell I might not want to discuss this movie, but Steven, who guest appeared here a few weeks ago and hopefully will soon in the future.
Yes.
What was I going to say? Okay, so we got into this discussion and I was like, sometimes I just read the Doctor Who wiki just for fun because of how insane it is, and take the knowledge I learned there into the podcast and drop it in the podcast like I just kind of did here. And he's like, so what you're saying is the Doctor Who wiki vicariously helped create Doctor Who since the podcast created Doctor Who? And I was like, oh God, no wonder Doctor Who gets batshit insane at times. The editors of the Doctor Who wiki are vicariously and secretly in charge. I mean, if you don't know, the Doctor Who wiki is like one of the most, I think I've called it this previously, it's one of the most surreal experiences you can have on the public internet currently. Like, it's just so weird, and you can go down so many rabbit holes.
That's because, and I've definitely mentioned this before, it straddles the line between being an in-universe wiki of like in-universe things, but also being a wiki in our universe about the TV show Doctor Who. And if you don't understand what that means, then like I think it'll make more sense when you realize that the Doctor Who wiki has pages for like grapes, and then it discusses like the history of grapes in the Doctor Who universe as we know it.
Right. I mean, you can even just go to the page for Doctor Who, like the character from this movie and the last movie, and you'll see some of that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm actually on the wiki now because the wiki surprisingly has the most like condensed section of strange fun facts about this movie that I could find anywhere. It's got kind of a list of actors in this movie who appear in other Doctor Who serials, which makes sense because it's the kind of thing that the Doctor Who wiki would reasonably track. So Philip Maddock appears in The Crotons, The War Games, The Brain of Morbius, and The Power of Kroll.
Oh, wow.
Eddie Powell was a stuntman on The Deadly Assassin. Roger Avon was Saladin in The Crusade and then played Daxter in Daleks Master Plan. Geoffrey Cheshire appeared in The Time Meddler, Daleks Master Plan, and The Invasion. Steve Peters was an extra in The Romans and The Seeds of Death. He played a pirate guard in The Space Pirates. And he was in The Ambassadors of Death as well. Eileen Way was in The Old Mother in Unearthly Child.
Oh, wow.
And The Creature from the Pit.
First death on Doctor Who.
Throwback to that death count we stopped keeping. And then Andre Morell was offered the role of Wyler, but couldn't accept because he was starring in, you guessed it, The Massacre.
Yeah, but I think the biggest, character who is in the actual Doctor Who, TV canon proper or whatever is Bernard Cummings, who goes on Cribbins, whatever.
Bernard Cribbins. Bernard Cribbins.
Who goes on to 40 years later play Wilf.
Yeah,
AKA
Wilf.
Wilfred Mott.
AKA Wilf. When are you bringing him back, Russell T. Mott?
Well, Russell T doesn't have that kind of power anymore.
He could. I'm sure if Russell T called up Chris Chibbers in the evening and was like, "Hey, Chibi, can I write for the show?" I'm sure Chibbers would be like,
"Hell no, your time is done, old man."
What is that gift? Your time, the future is now, old man. So I actually do have this random thing that I don't think they corrected for this movie, and this is something that they did in the first movie, and that I don't think they corrected for this movie. But so apparently the people who made these movies, or at least when they made Doctor Who and the Daleks, didn't realize that the lights on the top of the Daleks' heads correspond with when they're speaking. So the Daleks on screen just kind of flash their lights randomly. And then the voice actors, who apparently did know the flashing lights corresponded with the speaking, they tried to like match the speech of the Daleks with the flashing lights that were just flashing randomly, and eventually had to just give up because it like wasn't working. So there were like Daleks in at least Doctor Who and the Daleks, and I think in this one too, who just like flash their lights randomly, and they aren't even talking; they're just flashing their lights for no reason. So there you go.
Yeah, maybe it's to like blind their enemies. Or...
Clearly doesn't work.
The Daleks in this are like hilariously fragile as well. I mean, there's that moment when they're getting onto the flying saucer or whatever, which, by the way, looks really cool. That was probably one of my favorite parts of this movie, was the flying saucer. Mm-hmm. It has a cool sound effect as well. when it's on screen. But there's that moment when they're getting on the ramp for the flying saucer or whatever, and they just I think it's Tom. I can't remember though, but he just like rolls a Dalek down the ramp and it just blows up.
Yeah, I remember that scene. And also the fact that the Dalek can't like stop itself from rolling backwards down the ramp. Like, why would you make the ramp that steep?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this one, and come to think of it, the last one too, of like the Daleks creating a society and like things that they can't really use, like stairs, ramps that like can serve to be their undoing, like control panels and buttons that look really hard to operate when you don't have fingers and stuff like that.
Yeah. I one of my notes for this story basically says that this story does like a whole better job of fitting this into the Dalek lore than the actual Dalek Invasion of Earth ever did, because Doctor Who has multiple lines where he's like, I wonder where this fits into the Doctor Who time, like the Dalek timeline, because the Daleks I met, like, he basically directly acknowledges that the Daleks he met had to move on static electricity. And if I'm remembering Dalek Invasion of Earth right, they like kind of did that by giving all the Daleks the like satellite dishes on the back of the Daleks. I don't know if you remember this.
No, I don't.
They gave satellite dishes on the back of all the Daleks, and that was supposed to be their explanation, because now the Daleks are like getting beamed the power from like a central source. And then it wasn't until Dalek Master Plan, or The Chase actually, I think, where they were just like, you know what, that was dumb. We shouldn't do that. Let's just forget that the static electricity was a plot point. Whereas in the movie, Doctor Who is like, the Daleks I met had to use static electricity, so maybe this is in the future of their timeline. Or maybe it's in the past. He like even explicitly says like, I don't know when Doctor Who and the Daleks took place, so this could be the future or the past for the Daleks. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I also remember that Dalek Invasion of Earth took place in like 2020 something. Maybe it was like actually exactly 2020. But this one is like way further in the future. Yeah. But still, apparently Sugar Puffs are still around.
Yeah, so apparently Sugar Puffs helped fund the movie, which is maybe why the budget is higher. But also, I guess in exchange, they put in all that product placement.
Yeah, apparently this movie, I didn't notice any of this, but according to Amazon, this movie had a lot of product placement. I only noticed the Sugar Puffs one, but apparently there's a lot more as well.
I seem to feel like I noticed it subconsciously because I'm remembering there being strange products that just appeared out of nowhere. But I'm not remembering what they were, so I guess it wasn't very effective product placement.
Yeah, when it comes to product placement in movies, like I don't even really pay attention to it just in general, because it's so common that like you don't even notice it, or I don't at least. I think like if they were actually to like have something like the Sugar Puffs thing on an actual episode of Doctor Who, I would notice it a lot. But in this, it's just like whatever, it kind of flies under the radar.
Yeah.
But good to see that Quaker Oats, is still going strong in 2150, through an alien invasion.
Yeah, through an alien invasion that I might add has the most hilarious method of blocking the Doctor or Doctor Who from the TARDIS, which is just that like a beam of wood falls in front of the door and then they just can't move it. It's just...
It was a little more than that. It was like a beam of wood plus a little bit of rubble.
Oh, wow. A little bit of rubble.
Yeah, so if you remember back to early Doctor Who, they would always try and figure out a way to get the TARDIS out of commission, so the Doctor had or didn't have an excuse to just be like, well, we can just leave. We don't have to solve this problem. Eventually, somewhere down the line, they changed that to later incarnations of the Doctor actually want to stay, actually want to help solve problems, or sometimes make them worse, and actually want to, and actually want to help out, I guess, instead of just nope out of there. But this one follows suit with the original plan, which is to just get the TARDIS out of commission so that the Doctor doesn't just leave.
Well, he clearly wants to. Also, like, the story opens with this scene that is like, I'm pretty sure this is way different from the TV show because it opens with Tom as a policeman, like, completely failing to catch these criminals. So Tom is like the worst policeman we've ever seen on Doctor Who.
Yeah, this isn't, as far as I remember, this isn't in the serial. In the serial, like, there's no sort of like frame story-esque thing. It just goes right into the invasion.
Yeah, the Doctor lands. The TV show, I seem to remember, the Doctor lands in the future, and everything's bombed out, and they land like near that pier. I seem to remember, and they're being like, "Man, it's kind of weird that everything's bombed out. I wonder what happened." And then the Daleks show up, like in episode 2. But in this one, we meet Tom via Tom failing to apprehend some crims, and
Crimos.
he runs into the TARDIS, I guess, to call for backup.
Oh wait, the Crimos were from Blake 7. Never mind. Remember that from Hostage? The
Another Terry
incest
Nation,
episode of
another
Blake
Terry
7?
Nationism. But Tom like wants to call for backup or admit his failure to his superiors via the TARDIS telephone because he thinks it's a police box, an actual police box. And then at the end of the story, Doctor Who like dumps him back there, but like 3 minutes early, so he can capture the criminals using time travel shenanigans, so he can like weasel his way into a promotion.
And he still fails miserably. The criminals actually get away. No. They don't.
They don't. He captures him, and then we have this weird scene where he's in the car, like, cackling. I got him.
What does he say? Tom, whatever his last name was?
Tom Campbell.
OBE. Tom Campbell, OBE. Like, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's Campbell because it was David Campbell in the original story who falls in love with Susan. Except they can't do that here because Susie is, like, an underage, like, 10-year-old.
Yeah, as opposed to those overage 10-year-olds. Yeah, so we should also mention Barbara and Ian are not in this. Instead, we get Louise, I think it was.
Yeah, who's... Okay. Now, Louise is Doctor Who's niece, and Brendan laid out what he believed to be the family tree last week. Now, I was more concerned with the fact that Louise, since Louise is Doctor Who's... Louise would be roughly expected to be the same age as whoever Doctor Who's children would be, right? You know, give or take maybe, let's say, 10 years to be generous. But Louise looks the same age as Barbara, so... Yeah,
but remember, yeah, the family tree is just totally screwed. Like, Barbara looked 35, Susan in the first one looked 8, you know? Now Louise is coming in looking like probably way younger than she should.
I also like the implication that Doctor Who has like a brother or sister just running around England somewhere.
Potentially, maybe that's another Doctor Who. Maybe they're a doctor, and their last name, like the Doctor, is Who.
So you think it's Louise Who?
Yeah, could be. What if this is actually Doctor Who's twin from the first one? What if this is a different Doctor?
I mean, I was going to mention that like this Doctor Who seems less of a bumbling fool than the Doctor Who from Doctor Who and the Daleks does. Like his characterization seems to have drifted closer to that of the first Doctor in many aspects.
Yeah.
He has less like just throw away random funny lines. Seems to spend more time just joking, like more time being very serious and less time just joking around with the gang.
Yeah, but one thing that actually made me dislike the first half of this movie, at least, was that the humor, you know, it wasn't necessarily provided by the Doctor, but it was like there still, like in a really weird way. Like, you know, when the huge brawl between the humans and the Daleks and the Robo-Men. We'll have to touch on the Robo-Men in a minute. But like the music during that is just like this jazz piece, and it's just there's so much slapstick comedy, and I don't know, it just felt, even compared to the first one, it felt out of place.
I'm
And then they, and
amazed
then
that you're saying that, considering how the first one literally ended with the guy playing Ian throwing himself around the set for no reason, literally just banging himself against the console on the wall, going, "Can't you do something?" in the most overacted bullshit scene I've ever seen.
yeah, but that was so like I wouldn't consider that slapstick because that's so in line with like how they did things on the show, like, well, we just have to hold on to the console and shake our, shoulders around and pretend we were falling down
Yeah, but the
type thing.
console's not even falling down in that scene. It's literally just Ian having like a mental breakdown on screen that's played for laughs. That's basically what I would consider the definition of slapstick.
I wouldn't. I mean, I don't know. And especially because they just drop that and go for a more serious tone, like in the TV show, in the second half of the movie. I don't know. Just felt out of place to me. It just felt a little mismatched.
I didn't feel it was mismatched at all. I thought this was very coherent in terms of its comedy.
Maybe. I mean, some of the serious stuff was actually kind of funny as well. Like how many times people get sold out in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, people get. I mean, also like the just the hilarity of there being a literal microphone on the wall, and where Doctor Who just grabs it and goes, "Roboman, this order cannot be countermanded. Attack the Daleks!" And then he just like bangs the microphone against the wall to destroy it, and then just runs away. Like you could almost imagine him going hee 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 as he runs away.
Yeah, I guess.
And then just the
So,
hilarity of the Daleks just immediately killing all the Robomen with like no resistance from the Robomen at all.
so this came out in August '66. Were the Cybermen a thing by that time? They were, right?
I don't know, but the Robomen were in the original story as well, so it wasn't
Oh, they
a
were.
creation for
I
this
forgot.
movie.
I
Yeah,
forgot about
they
that.
were, and I went and looked them up because I wasn't sure if like how much they changed the design of the Robomen, and they changed the design of the Robomen like a lot. That biker leather that all the Robomen are wearing was not their outfit in the original serial.
Huh.
But yeah, yeah, because I remember the Robomen going like insane in the original story. Like there was like a whole subplot where the Robomen, like after a certain amount of time, would just literally lose their mind completely.
I don't remember any of this. But there's another first that this movie has as well, which is that the Doctor wears a scarf. You thought Tom Baker did it first? Haha, you were wrong.
Doesn't the first Doctor like literally wear a scarf in the 10th Planet?
Oh, maybe I can't remember.
Seem to remember that because they were in Antarctica and he's like, it's gonna be pretty cold out there, and I seem to remember him putting on a scarf.
Yeah, I don't remember. In this one, he definitely does, though.
Yeah, he's got that pastel blue number.
That blinding blue.
I was bummed that Susie had less to do in this movie because I particularly enjoyed Susie was one of the highlights of the first movie for me.
Yeah, and I mean, Susan was at, if not her best, then like one of her best. It was one of her best stories. The Daleks, that is, and that was carried over for the movie. But in this, I mean, they obviously had to rewrite Susan's role in this because of what happens in the TV show.
Right.
And taking a step back from that, this is a lot more rewritten than the Daleks was. Like just in general, as far as I can remember, at least.
Well, the wiki has a whole long list of changes. If you're like ever curious to know what actually changed, the list is not as extensive as I would have expected, but
Huh.
One of the changes is the Robomen rebellion is not the undoing of the Daleks in the film version. In fact, it is dealt with swiftly by the Daleks. But my favorite one is this one that ends with, in a totally non-scientifical process. Like ignoring the fact that scientifical is not a word.
Well, maybe not ignoring it like purposely, maybe just not knowing, like.
Yeah, well, so according to the Amazon Fun Facts, which, great to hit up if you're bored. In the first movie, Gordon Flemying offered Roberta Tovey, I think it was 5 pence every time she did a scene in one take, because she was a child actor, and I guess he didn't want to have to do 20 takes. And apparently she made so much money off that deal in the first film that for the second one, he didn't offer her that. He was like, yeah, no.
Well, it's how much could you actually make? How many scenes are in the movie, and how many of those scenes have her in it?
She was quite a big part in the.
So
she was quite a big part in the first movie.
It's 5 pence, so even if you have
5 pence in 1965.
But still. Oh, I forgot. This is another opportunity to post that or link to that conversion chart thing of how the British money system used to work.
Really bringing it full circle, shall we say.
Someone actually says the words full circle in this movie.
Wow. Just wow. There's also, actually, for this week, another difference from Doctor Who and the Daleks, which I guess is what we're kind of on the topic of here. There's an actual Doctor Who-esque title sequence to this movie.
Yeah.
Doctor Who and the Daleks just kind of overlaid their names on a static background of some sort.
On the Ocean's 11 title sequence, but way lower budget.
Whereas this one has an actual swirling. It kind of reminded me of either a milkshake machine or the mixing up of the pink goop that McDonald's uses for chicken nuggets.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
And then they kind of overlay the names over that. The music, the intro music is totally different, so that's great. Means I have to rejigger yet another title sequence for this podcast.
Well, not necessarily.
I mean, I guess I could use the same one as last week, but where's the fun in that?
The fun is in having an extra 20 minutes or however long it takes you to cut out the sound and put it in the episode.
Took me 5 minutes, which was really annoying given the fact it took 2 hours to export. So, fun little behind the scenes. Last week, I exported the episode using the 11th Doctor's intro and outro music on accident. I don't know how that happened, but I realized literally after it finished exporting, I was like, wow, damn. Now I'm going to have to wait a whole nother 2 hours for it to export again for this 5-minute change I had to make. So, great.
I guess a few more just fun facts or things I noticed in this. The Doctor uses the oldest trick in the book right before he commands the Robomen to attack the Daleks. How he does that is he goes look over there to one of the Daleks and just runs over to the control panel. So that was a nice throwback. And another part I liked from this movie was just the Dr. Seuss-esque door that just leads to nowhere. It's at the beginning of the movie when Doctor Who and Tom are in the little warehouse thing, and they just Tom just walks through a door and it just it's just a door on the second story of a building that just leads to nothing. And he almost falls out.
The Winchester Mystery House-esque set design. Just brilliant.
And now I'm actually out of things to say.
Yeah, I'm pretty much out of things to say. So at least about this.
We could talk for hours about other stuff, and now we're going to proceed to no.
Yeah, buckle up, boys. Longest episode of TYD right here.
What if we just recorded like a 14-hour episode one day and like that had like barely anything to do with Doctor Who, and just put it out as like a mainline episode? Like, what if we did that for when the show comes back with what is the next one going to be called?
Revolution of the Daleks.
Right.
Yeah, we just start talking about the story for the first half an hour, and then we just segue into something else for the next 13 and a half. The thing is, our dedicated fans would download it, and they would start listening to it, and they'd probably get to the 2-hour mark and check out. I mean, it would be the true test of, like, because everybody tells us, the tangents are what people are here for, which, if people listen, they listen, and it'd be the true test of whether that's actually true or not, because it'd be 13 hours of tangent, basically.
Yeah, you liars. No, just kidding.
Well, so grammar is hard. There were plans to make a sequel, which would adapt the story of the chase. Obviously, they didn't end up doing that because, well, this movie didn't do very... Yeah, this movie failed. And so they decided to just shut it down, basically.
Yep. That was that.
And yeah, that's the last we ever heard of that.
Of Doctor Who, yeah. Well, there was another movie, although it was a documentary, made in like the 80s or 90s, I want to say, called Dalek Mania, which follows the making of this movie and Doctor Who and the Daleks. I didn't watch it, but it's out there.
There's also, I think, I don't know if they're remasters or just re-releases, but these two movies are coming to Blu-ray this year, in fact. I believe in June or July, with some gorgeous cover art, just gonna say.
I think this one at least was already released on Blu-ray years ago, but I think they're just re-releasing it or something like that. I don't know.
I suspect it's a re-release. I think you're right, but I like to imagine that they've done some maybe rescanning of the original negatives. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
This is one of the few Doctor Who things from pre-reboot era that can be released on Blu-ray because it was filmed on film. And Doctor Who was filmed on videotape, except for Spearhead from Space, which is why Spearhead from Space is a Blu-ray transfer, because they could rescan the film negatives.
Well, they can just release them on Blu-ray without like doing anything to the footage.
If they wanted to, but what would the point of that be?
Money, because there's going to be people who like. So I don't know what like season the DVD box sets that have been coming out for forever are on, but like there are people who would buy those and the Blu-ray releases.
I mean, there are, but you have to crunch the numbers. Like, let's talk about Star Trek, because Star Trek is something that I've been watching recently while I'm stuck in quarantine. So Star Trek was also filmed on film, and a couple years ago they remastered the original series, and then they did Next Generation, and they rescanned all the film negatives, and it turned out to be an arduous process because they had to like recreate all of the ship scenes, because it turns out the original footage of the studio models like didn't transfer great when they rescanned the negatives, so they had to like recreate all of it with CG upscaling or CG models. Basically, they had to do post-production on the show again. But everyone's clamoring for them to remaster Deep Space Nine as well. But apparently CBS has come out and said, yeah, it wouldn't be profitable. Like, not enough people would buy it. And you have to wonder, like you said, there are people who are going to buy it. There are people who probably own Deep Space Nine on like VHS and DVD who would be like, hell yeah, another format. Yeah, I'm gonna add that to my collection. But the thing is, like, now with streaming platforms being so ubiquitous, less people are going to be likely to buy those kind of things, because if you can just stream the HD version of the movie, most people aren't the like anti-streaming pariahs that I guess some people are. Most people go for ease of use. So if you can just stream the HD remaster, like, what's kind of the point of spending all this money to manufacture Blu-rays? And because you have to remember that manufacturing Blu-rays is more than just the remastering. It's you have to manufacture the physical product as well. So
yeah, I mean, they could also put it up for streaming on some services paid and on some services, free with subscription or whatever. And make money there of every time somebody wants to watch this, they're paying whatever $2.99 or whatever it is type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they'd have to decide whether it was worth it or not.
Well, that's like something that some people have suggested for Deep Space Nine. They're like, well, why doesn't CBS just remaster it? And CBS has got their own streaming platform now, so they could put the HD copies on their streaming platform, and then that'll probably entice more people over to CBS All Access, which is, by the way, a garbage streaming platform.
Well, I have BritBox now, and
only for the next 5 days.
Next 5 days, yeah. So I'll see if there's anything worthwhile on there in the 2 minutes of free time I have. The
Massacre.
Yeah.
Well, so as we come to the close of our continuous run through Doctor Who, we've finally come to a kind of consensus on what we want to do next.
2 minutes ago, might I add.
In classic Trust Your Doctor fashion, we only really figured it out while we were recording. But I think it's a good idea to do.
I do too. The more classic episodes we can redo and make better, the better.
Yeah, so
kind of hinting at what the plan is here.
So I know we are going to go into Torchwood at some point. Because I do want to do Torchwood. I think it's relevant because Chris Chibnall was the showrunner for Torchwood, and with Jack Harkness back on the show and potentially coming back in a bigger capacity later, I think now is as relevant a time as any. But before getting to Torchwood, Keon's been suggesting for a long time that we revisit the Massacre, and I haven't been, shall we say, cordial to the idea until 2 minutes ago. So I think what we've kind of collectively come up with is for the next 7 weeks, we want to revisit what we considered at the time, or what we think we considered at the time, to be the worst serial from that Doctor's era, so from 1 through 7. So for the next 7 weeks, we'll be revisiting some greatest hits.
Well, okay, so partly because we're just gluttons for punishment, but also partly to reevaluate some of the stories that we disliked when we knew a lot less about Doctor Who and had a lot less context, and now seeing if they're really that bad,
Yeah, having kind of, like you said, reevaluating. I think looking back with the perspective of we've seen every televised episode of Doctor Who now, including the two movies, and looking at it from that perspective, I think the earlier ones will benefit from this more so than the later ones.
Probably.
And then once we finish that, we will go into Torchwood, finally, for real. So,
yeah.
So sorry if there are people out there really hoping next week was going to be Torchwood, but if you've been following our show for a long time, I think revisiting the Massacre is something that you're really going to enjoy. I think we're going to put together a pretty good episode on it next week. I'm going to be honest.
This also, I know this is something we're probably not fully cognizant of right now, but this means we're going to have to rewatch the Massacre.
I know. It hasn't really hit me yet. It's gonna 4 days from now, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to pull up the Massacre, which, in case you're new to the show or you don't know, the Massacre doesn't actually exist. It's a reconstruction, which means it's audio with still images for 2 hours. And I'm going to sit down and pull up my still image recreator, and I'm just going to be like, I can't believe we did this.
Yeah, you're going to do that 3 days from now. I'm going to do that 12 hours before recording, and I'm going to hate myself for it. I already know, like, there's no use even saying that I'm going to change. Like, I know it's going to happen.
Well, on that note, before we lead out into the outro, since this seems like a natural endpoint for the first era of the show, I just want to say a big thank you to all the people who have reached out over the years. I was going to assemble like a list of them, but then Keon was like, I've communicated with hundreds of people on Twitter, so
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone.
But just know, if you have communicated with us online or sent in an email or been a guest on the podcast or just listened to us ever, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We really truly couldn't have done this without you. I want to say that. I mean, we do this for fun. We do this for our own enjoyment, but I think part of that enjoyment comes in spreading that enjoyment or sharing that enjoyment with other people. So,
right.
And here's to another 6 years of Trust Your Doctor. May she live forevermore. Immortalized in the Doctor Who canon. And on that rather somber note, if you would like to reach out and email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, thank you, rants, love letters, your thoughts on Doctor Who. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, all at Trust Your Doctor. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. Next time, we're going to be revisiting the single worst Doctor Who story ever, in our humble opinions, the Massacre. But until then, the end.